All staff need to be trained, and this includes identifying signs of possible abuse and neglect at the earliest opportunity. So it's looking from now till then, how are you going to progress and get all your staff trained in child protection? Okay? Something that came out of the Little Ted's inquiry was about, under child protection, is highlighting any inappropriate behaviour displayed by anyone working with your children. So that's looking at that in a timely and appropriate manner. For example, if your members of staff are saying any inappropriate sexual comments or giving excessive one-to-one attention to a particular child, it's looking at what processes, beyond the requirements of that role, if they're doing something you think they're doing something that doesn't just sit right, it's looking at those processes now and looking in place at what your staff, a whistleblowing policy, things like that, to make sure you've got that in place. And as I said, the mobile phone and camera policy. Providers must also have regard to the government strategy working together to safeguard children. That is in there as the EYFS, so make sure it's referred to within your policy. Another big focus now is a focus on staff development, appraisals and regular supervisions. You just show your hands if you do supervisions already. So a few of you do. When I worked in nurseries, we had supervisions regularly between 6 and 8 weeks, and as room leader I actually carried those out for the staff within my room, and it was a good opportunity to look at have those conversations about the key children, if you had any concerns about any of the key children, looking at if they had any issues with any of the parents or any other members of staff, and it just tried to combat any issues like straight away rather than them going on and on. It gave them that opportunity to talk to you about them. So what I would recommend is that you look at putting a standard form together. It could also have timekeeping and attendance on there as well. So you're bringing that up at every 6 to 8 weeks in case there's any issues, and that's giving them the opportunity, if they have got any issues and they feel that something doesn't sit right with them, at least then you can bring it out in your supervisions. So the early years foundation stage is stating that all staff who have regular contact with children and families need to have a supervision meeting. That's obviously going to have some implications for you as settings to when they happen, who's going to do them, how you're going to release staff to do them, what time you're going to do them. So there are a lot of things to consider. Okay, but it is in there and it is a legal requirement. It's also an opportunity for you to talk about continuous professional development, so that will need to be on the form as well. And then appraisals should be annually. Do you all do appraisals? You just show hands if how many of you do appraisals? Most of you have got that in place, so it's just adding the supervision process in place. Okay. And then finally, the statement that they've also put as one of the key changes is about the daily deployment of staff across the setting to meet the ratio requirements. So the ratios have maintained the same, the 1:3, the 1:4 and the 1:8, but they are saying that you need to ensure that staff are adequately supervised and decide how to deploy the staff, and you must inform parents of that. So it might be in your entrance that you have a board showing where your staff are on that particular day and that you are meeting your ratios. Okay? So there to pick out the key changes. There are some minor changes to some of the other welfare requirements, such as now you need to have sterilising equipment for baby's food, that's in there, and little tweaks like that. But I have only picked out the main key points today because we've only got the short time period, so I do recommend you do go away and read it. So if you just spend a couple of minutes just talking to the person beside you, just so I can have a drink, and you just talk about what things, looking at the welfare requirements, what are the key things that you're going to have to change when you go back to your setting, and I'll pull you all back together in when I've had a drink. Okay, I'll bring you back together just to give you an opportunity. Does anybody want to shout out? I don't know if we'll be able to hear you all, but we'll give it a try. Does anybody want to shout out any preparing for implementation, what they think they're going to have to do? No? Probably not going to be able to hear. Sorry about that. I'll put them up on the ones that I'd put. So about planning your child protection training for all of your staff, obviously that is crucial and a high priority. Develop your new policies or make your changes where applicable. Develop your appraisal and supervision forms or tweak the existing ones that you've got. just to make sure they're covering everything. Make changes to your key policies and procedures, and this might include your staff handbook, your parental communications, your setting brochures, your website, displays, operational files, and your Ofsted self-evaluation form. So remembering to be consistent throughout. Okay? So we'll now move on to the learning and development requirements, and you may have seen the development matters in the early years foundation stage. So this is non-statutory guidance, where it does support you in implementing the statutory requirements and talk about the different areas of learning. There is now 7 areas of learning rather than the 6 as we all know and love. There's 3 prime areas of learning, and it's you would focus on the 3 prime areas of learning more with the younger children. We will come to that on the next slide. Then moving into the 4 specific areas of learning for the older children. The early learning goals have been slimmed down from 69 to 17, so these are what they're assessed on at the end of the foundation stage. And when they're assessed against these, there are 3 levels, looking at emerging, not where they may be at risk of delay, expected, so they're working as they should be, and exceeding, so they're ahead of the development stage. There is a more focus on the effective characteristics of learning, and again we'll touch on them in a separate slide. So practitioners working with the youngest children are expected to focus strongly on these 3 prime areas, which are the basis for successful learning in the 4 specific areas. The 3 prime areas are personal, social and emotional development, and I'm sure you'll agree, without really feeling safe and secure, the children aren't going to learn and develop. So it is fundamental that we're getting in there with the youngest children and making sure that they feel secure and they've got that attachment and they can progress and learn. Communication and language, again, we know that that's key. Babies communicate from such a young age, and we know that we need to encourage that from that young age, get our practitioners really skilled in knowing how babies communicate and respond to that, and carry it through, promote the language. We know more and more children are being referred to speech and language, and we need to combat that and make sure we focus on it as early as possible. And finally, physical development. Learning to sit, learning to crawl, learning to walk. We know that these things are so important, and we know that many a times you spend a lot of your day doing things like that, feeding, making healthy choices with the younger children, and so it makes sense that these are 3 prime areas. It's important not to lose the specific areas, and I think that's the only danger of splitting it up in this way, because we know that children want to explore, they want to investigate, we know that they want to read books and develop the literacy skills, so we don't want to lose the 4 specific areas because they will naturally be part of them in the playing and the learning. So don't just think, that's it, I'm only having those 3 prime areas on my planning sheet. Make sure you do incorporate the others with working with the younger children. But there is more emphasis, and you know on your day-to-day basis there's more emphasis on them prime areas. Okay? And then the 4 specific areas, these are literacy, mathematics. We tried getting them not to call it mathematics. We love problem solving, reasoning and numeracy, but it's still mathematics. Understanding the world, I think it's going to take a while to get used to these new terminology. And expressive arts and designs rather than creative development. So they're mainly the same, they include the same, it's just the new terminology which we've got to get used to. And I think the biggest thing that's going to take the most time is getting 7 boxes on a page. You know how hard it is to get 6 boxes, and now you've got to create another box. That's going to take the most time. You'll need the 3,000 hours, I think, just to do that. So we're just going to do a quick activity. I have put it up on the board in case you couldn't get a pack, but it's just looking at the new terminology and just looking at which aspects come under that, and it's just giving you time to look at the words and get used to them. I know how many of you are guilty of calling the local pub or the local shop something it were actually called 10 years ago. I know that I am. I still refer to the corner shop as Ted's, where actually it's the Tesco's now. But it's one of those things you get in your head. So by doing this activity, it'll just give you a chance to look at the new technology, the new aspects of learning, and see which ones go in which area of learning and development. So you can either talk to the person at the side of you. So for example, you'd look at the aspect understanding and say, oh, which one does that come under? And it comes under communication and language, and you'll do that throughout. I have got some packs and I will hand them out to some of you, but otherwise just discuss it as a pair. Okay? Do you want to have one of the packs?
To show them what the the learner elements are.
Yeah, I'll talk about that one next as well. everybody, we'll come back together. I've just put them up there, which ones come under which. So I know that there's a lot of crossover and you might have think, oh, I'm not quite sure which one that comes over. But naturally, within early years and within the 7 areas of learning and development, there are going to be crossovers. We can't put children into little boxes. So in there, we've got personal, social, emotional development. We've got making relationships, self-confidence and self-awareness, and managing feelings and behaviour. You all get that? Yeah? Physical development, that's now gone down to just 2. Moving and handling, health and self-care. Communication and language, as you can see, literacy is being split off from there now. So we've just got the listening and attention, the understanding and the speaking. And was many of you involved in the Every Child a Talker project? Yeah, because some of the statements from that have been put into the EYFS now, which is a real good positive move. Literacy, reading and writing in there. Mathematics, numbers, shape, space and measure. Understanding the world, people and communities, the world and technology. And finally, expressive arts and designs. We've got exploring and using media and materials and being imaginative. Okay. Just moving on, as I talked about the 3 characteristics of learning, these are new for the EYFS. And it's in the document, they have kept the themes that underpin the EYFS, so your unique child, positive relationships, and enabling environment, but then they've also added the 3 characteristics of learning. So when you look at these underpin everything that you do on a day-to-day basis. So you've got playing and exploring, and really developing children's engagement. So it's looking at how in your planning, you can make sure that you're enabling children to find out and explore, play with what they know, so following children's interests, which is still a big part of the early years foundation stage, and making sure they're willing to have a go, so that no fear environment where they're not going to have supporting the process, not just the end product, making sure they will have a go. It's really good that active learning's been put in there. I've tried to break up this session a little bit and put a little bit of activities in, because we know that you learn better like that and different learning styles, and it's the same for children. We don't just want them sat there on a carpet preaching at them, we want them to active, have a go and learn through doing. Being involved and concentrating and being really motivated to learn. We want them to keep on trying, we don't want them to be put off by learning, we want them to keep going. And we want them to enjoy achieving what they set out to do. And then creating and thinking critically is in there, so we've got that creative aspect still, which is really important, and that thinking. So following children's lead, following child-initiated learning, having their own ideas, making links within the learning and choosing the way that they want to do things, not being adult directed all the time and saying you must do it this way. It's giving children the opportunity to choose the way they want to do it. If they're building a train track, they might not want to put the pieces together. I heard a horror story the other day that somewhere had glued the train track down to the table so they couldn't move it around. But actually a child might want to do it in a different way. Just making sure that we encourage that. And this is the complete picture. So this is a good pictorial guide for those of you that prefer to look at it in this way. And it's showing how they all fit together. So you can see the 3 prime areas are slightly larger because they underpin the specific areas. You've got the unique child at the centre, and then you've got the characteristics of learning coming off. And this might be a good thing to just print off and laminate and stick around to your setting, just so you can see, get familiar with the new words and see it on a day-to-day basis. I know when the original EYFS came out, the first thing a lot of people did was put up the big poster. We've not got the poster this time, but there's nothing stopping you doing your own displays from now until September, so your parents can see the changes, your staff can see it, and then you're getting all familiar with the new words. So that might be something good to go back and do straight away. It will be on the website, yeah, because it is in the document, so it will be there. It's in the Development Matters document, it's in there, okay? So making the changes. We know that change has to be done gradually because we don't like drastic change overnight, but we know that a lot of changes can be for the better. but it is everyone's responsibility to implement them. You've got to work as a team. You've not got to just the managers do everything, because then we know it's not always going to be implemented because people have not got ownership of it. So it's important that you work together as a team. And use your staff meetings. There's now 8 welfare requirements. If you planned 8 meetings between now and September, you could cover 1 welfare requirement at each one. You could do case studies, so especially around child protection, do some little case studies. At least then staff can demonstrate their understanding of your policies. Ask different staff to present them. I remember as a young practitioner being given behaviour management, and I had to present it at the staff meeting, and I was nervous. I was like, oh, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. But actually, I knew that behaviour management policy better than any other policy, because I'd had input into it, I'd developed it myself with feedback from the team, and I'd actually presented it, and then the staff knew it better as well, because it's a little bit different than just reading it. So think of creative ways, think of different ways that you can present things to staff, just so they are getting all the information in. Involve your parents. If you've got to make any changes, involve them. Ask them how they'd like to receive information. It's part of the EYFS requirement now that you do have to inform parents about the early years foundation stage, or direct them to where they can get information from. So ask them how they want that information. Do they want to be told it? Do they want a newsletter? Do they want an email? Do they want a text message? Give them different solutions and ask them how they best want that information. And then think about your timescales. You know how many weeks you've got, and look at your action planning on priority levels. Okay. As I said, one of the hardest things is going to be looking at your documentation and changing the wording, which it is an administration task. If you've got someone that's quick and a bit more IT literate, use their time. They'll be able to do it a little bit quicker. So find the best person to do that. You will have to change your learning journeys, your observation templates, your planning templates, your photo albums maybe, your displays, and your parental communications. So that's, again, the admin time. Nobody really wants to do it, but it needs to be done, and it's looking at the best person to do that in the quickest time. I think the progress check's one of the newest. It's obviously we've not had the progress check before, so it is one of the things that people are probably the most apprehensive about. But just to show of hands, how many do continually have parent meetings and feedback about children's development? So most of you are doing that. I think the only difference is it's now called a 2-year-old progress check, and it just makes it sound a little bit more formal. But if your processes are working and you're meeting parents regularly and you're sharing the progress, all you may have to do is change the form that you're using. So the intention is, it's under section 2.3, and the intention is for practitioners to review children's progress between the age of 2 and 3. There's no set requirement as to when this needs to be done, and it does depend on how long the child's been at the setting. So if a child's only just started, then they're not settled, you're not going to get the best picture from them. What I would have liked to have done today is shown some video clips of children who would be ready for the progress check and some that wouldn't, so you could see the difference. But unfortunately we've not got the time. But you'll know your children, and the key person will know if they're ready to have the check, if they're secure, if they're learning and developing and playing, and then they'll know when that check should take place. The purpose of the check is to review the child's progress, specifically around the 3 prime areas. So you'll have a standard form. National Children's Bureau have developed some information about this that is available on the Families in the Foundation Years website. And on there's 3 forms, what they've devised. There's no requirement to use those forms, but they're there as a guide. So if you've got forms that are working, you might just need to tweak the terminology again. Or you can use the ones that NCB have provided. What they want to do is include a short report to parents, picking out the key strengths that that they enjoy playing with, the key strengths in the development, and highlight any areas that they're developing less than expected. So if they have got language delay and you want to put strategies in place to support that, then you can highlight it to the parents, put in action plans, and then if referrals need to be made, you can use this as an opportunity to make those referrals. So in a way, it's giving you the opportunity, if there are any issues, to bring them to the parents' attention as soon as possible and get that early intervention in place. So preparing for implementation in September may include adapting or designing a progress check form with your consultants from your staff and your parents. You might want to try and test some out, so you might want to start now and seeing how it's going to work. Think about who's going to complete them. Are you going to get the key person to complete them, because they should know the child the best, but how's that going to work? And how confident are they going to feel if they've got to feed some sensitive information back? So that might highlight a training need for your staff in dealing with issues sensitively and feeding back to parents. And then this could form part of the supervision process as well. So if you've got your supervision forms, you might want to put a separate box on there for your 2-year-olds, just to like say, have you considered when you're going to have your 2-year-old progress check with that particular child, and are there any concerns that you want to raise, so the manager can be there as a support as well. There is a drive from the Department of Health to link up with health visitors in the future for these checks to work. Because we know that the health visitor checks at the moment, they do the 2-year-old check, and it is hoped that this progress check would be done alongside the 2-year-old check. But at the moment, we know there is a shortage of health visitors, and there's a big drive to employ 3,500 by 2015. So at the moment, it is just the nursery focusing on this and trying to encourage the parents to share the form with the health visitor, but we know that there are difficulties with getting them linked with health visitors. In an ideal world, that's how we'd like it to work, but at the moment it's just looking at the child 2 to 3, when's the best time to do the check, look at the 3 prime areas, pick out the key strengths, the areas that they're not developing as well in, share that with parents and encourage the parents to share it with a health visitor. Does that all make sense? Yeah, so have a look. The NCB have produced about a 38-page document giving you all the information, why we need them, what's the intention of them, and it's broken down really clearly, and there are example forms for you to use. Pardon? Are the is the implication? Yeah.
I was just saying that there is implication for CAF as well. The common assessment framework that we do, there is a major concern about families, or the child may have been the one that the concern stemmed from. So I was going to say that it's going to also mean that, to be honest, all members of staff should really want to have training. Because it's my kind of 2-year-old that can actually causing concern, because most of them are language or speech delay at the moment, or domestic violence or something along that.
Thank you. Did everyone get that? It's about looking at staff training, professional development, ensuring staff are trained around CAF. Because of the 2-year-old pilot and obviously the increased number of 2-year-olds from 2013, there are going to be some implications, and staff will need to be trained in CAF and different things like that, so it's looking at that for the future. Okay, so moving on, the final slide is looking at Ofsted. We know that the Ofsted just closed from consultation, so we don't know exactly what the framework is going to look like, but from the consultation we have a rough idea, and I thought it was important to share that. The main proposals are that the Ofsted inspections will focus more on child development from the starting points, how you plan for those children's individual needs, how you consider the next potential steps, how you're involving parents in the child's journey. There is a lot more emphasis on parents. If you read the consultation, there is a lot more emphasis on how you're working with parents, because we know it's important when we work together with the parents, it's better outcomes for the children. That's looking at all about me forms that you fill in, parental observations in the learning journeys, parental consultations, and your 2 to 3-year-old progress check. And looking at the key person's knowledge of their child is sound and up to date, so making sure that their relationships with the key person are strong. they're not swapped and changed, and a new member of staff goes in and actually they don't know that child very well at all. People are clued up about the children, they know their needs, they know their interests, they know the development stages. And if they need a backup key person, then that backup key person knows that crucial information. And if questioned by Ofsted or any member, they'll be able to demonstrate that. And finally, a little game just to finish off. I talked about making sure that things are creative and new ways of doing things. So just to try and reinstate that new terminology, some of you may have noticed or may have had a little tamper. There's some envelopes on the back of your chairs. So if you have got an envelope on the back of your chair, if you want to take that off now, just keep it closed, don't open it just yet. They're actually hot seats. And what we're going to do is just play a little bingo game. We can't be by the seaside and not play bingo. So what we'll do is as they appear, you can all open your envelope now, but as they appear I want you to shout it out and wave it in the air, and at the end you can come down for a prize. Okay? So open your envelope now. Everybody opened one. And they're going to appear magically one by one on the screen, and you've got to shout it out as loud as you can in your big voices. Anybody got it? Shout it out.